According to Mahul, the first stage of the Moro Wars spanned from the fall of Manila in 1565 to the eventual abandonment of the Spanish vassal state of Brunei in 1581. The conflict was mainly fought by the Spaniards and the Brunei Sultanate. The apparent Spanish aggression against the Sultanate stems from the immense political, economic, and religious power it holds in the archipelago. Because of this, Brunei became an adversary in the eyes of the Iberian colonizers, and in order to thwart the influence that extended to the islands, the Spaniards decided to act. The opportune time came when a power struggle divided the Brunei Sultanate, and one of the claimants to the throne sought Spanish support for his campaign in exchange for his kingdom to pay tribute to Spain. With Spain's military might, the Brunei Sultan eventually became a vassal state. The deposed Sultan tried to mount a comeback in 1581, however, was defeated by the Spaniards. The significance of the first phase lies in the Spanish strategic military moves to weaken Brunei, which was believed to be the source of political and Islamic strength in the archipelago. Although they were successful in crushing the Brunei Sultanate, the Spaniards would soon learn that Brunei had little to do with the Islamization of the Philippines. Hence, after 1581, Spaniards left Brunei and did not exercise any significant political influence over it. In 1578, the Spaniards made the first attempt to have a permanent colony in Maguindanao. A naval battle arose at the mouth of the Brunei River, and the Bruneians resisted the Spanish forces. On the other hand, a Sulu ruler claimed dominance over the islands of Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, Basilan, Zamboanga, and Cavite. In 1591, the Spanish government in Manila decided to colonize Maguindanao. With several attempts, the Spaniards were able to build the fort at Tampakan, and the Muslims attempted to get to the fort, but it ended with a failure. In revenge, the Spaniards aimed to make use of the natural resources of Mindanao and converted them. The Muslims now then used their resources for defense and offense against Spanish-held settlements in other parts of the Philippines. The Spaniards planned several attempts to conquer Maguindanao, but it all led to a failure. The third stage of the Moro Wars begins with the Muslims going on the offensive and ends with the Spaniards going on a counter-offensive. In 1597, the Spaniards withdrew from their garrison in La Caldera, thus giving the people of Maguindanao an easy way to the islands of Basilan. La Caldera had been a key point for the Spaniards, as this was where they collected their tributes from the islands of Basilan. In 1599, the Maguindanaos began to perform raids on the coastal towns of Panay, Negros, and Cebu. In 1602, the Muslims began to form a naval fleet and out-strategized the Spaniards as they continued with their raids on other parts of the Philippines. The Spaniards counteracted the raids by sending an expedition to Sulu, and in their battle with the Spaniards, Sulu's forces retired to fortified areas and continued to combat the Spaniards for months. Spaniards then retired to Panay as they also failed to capture the Sultan of Sulu, but the expedition did prevent the Sulu from joining a fleet of Maguindanaos and Sangils. The Muslims then attacked several towns and ports and entered a blood pact with the Datus of Leyte. As the Muslim raids continued, the Spaniards could not respond properly due to the dangers of a Chinese uprising in Manila. Away in order to focus their defense against the Dutch, the Spaniards decided to have a peace treaty with Rahabuwayan. This military strategy shows how the Spaniards chose to be at peace with the Muslims because it would be more advantageous to them. It would give them more control of the Philippines, a better defense against bigger threats like the Dutch, and lastly be at so-called peace with the Muslims. The fortification of Zamboanga and Jolo was the fourth phase of the Moro Wars. By building forts, the Spaniards were able to control the area for 28 years until they decided to abandon it to focus on the attacks in Manila. The benefits in building the forts were less effort and ammunition at their expense, a safe haven for Spanish soldiers in times of attack, and centralized control of the Maguindanaoan area. They tried to capture Kudarat because he was the life and the leader of the Muslims, but they failed to do so, and eventually no one won the war because the Spaniards left Mindanao and focused on Manila.